Conversations and coffee today. On this 12th day of August, 2021. I'm Ellen O'Shaughnessy, coordinator of the program, and we're here virtually and by virtue of our creative technician, Lindsay Lasanti, who brings us the Zoom connection and facilitates the projection of the images of our guest artist, amazing. Lindsay is a graduate of Otterbein University. Katie Fisher, a graduate of Columbus College of Art and Design, is our pro in getting the word out about Conversations and Coffee for our beloved Recreation and Parks Cultural Arts Center, located in downtown Columbus across from Bicentennial Park. We're delighted to have with us Becky Sorensen Bowers, daughter of the late Philip Sorensen, who died in 2017. With Becky is her mother, Jan Sorensen, widow of Philip. Philip's works are exhibited in our main gallery at the Cultural Arts Center. The stunning exhibit is entitled Law, Lumber, and Stone, surrounded by paintings of our instructor, Sharon Putter, whose works we will share in Conversations and Coffee, September 23rd. Philip's exhibit was created by his family to share his artistic journey and celebrate his life. Thank you, Jan and Becky, for being with us today. Philip is with us in spirit through this magnificent exhibit. I viewed it at the Cultural Arts Center and felt so gifted with his talent and creativity. Thank you for what you've done to support him and bring his work to us. Philip served 3 years in the Peace Corps during the Korean War. He returned to Nebraska and graduated magna cum laude from the University of Nebraska College of Law. He served as clerk to the federal judge for 1 year and then private practice in Lincoln, Nebraska. He later became active in state government, including being elected lieutenant governor. His journey then led him from Nebraska to Washington, D.C., and then to the Ohio State University College of Law. Philip was a lifelong athlete, continued to play tennis, including the National Senior Games, where he won the bronze medal. After retiring in 1995, Philip and Jan spent their winters in London, England for 13 years and every summer at their farm in eastern Pennsylvania. Adult education was readily available in London, and Philip decided to look into sculptural art, ultimately leading to his having small studios at the farm in Pennsylvania. Jan and Philip raised 4 children and now have 5 grandchildren. Jan, you were a school teacher and quilter and docent at the Columbus Museum of Art for many years. You and Philip shared a love of the arts and appreciated the opportunities offered in Columbus. Becky, you're the oldest child and just retired after 35 years of teaching art, first in Whitehall and then in Hilliard. Married to Mike Bowers, you have 2 boys. Brother Alan lives here in Columbus. Sister Karen lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. Her youngest sister, Becky's youngest sister, Josephine, lives in Portland, Oregon. Becky, take it away with sharing your father's exhibit, Law, Lumber, Stone.
Well, I suppose we ought to talk about the name first.
All right.
And the title was born of more, he worked in law specifically, and then when he retired, the next 20 years were spent doing lumber and stone, working in wood and sculpture. So that's how we got the name. I'm not sure how, a lot of our family is on this Zoom, and if they have anything to add to what they think about the name. I'd love to hear. We would love to hear. So that's pretty much it. As far as the timeline, we created a timeline that I don't know, there was a picture we took of it, a general picture that we were able to lead everybody through in order to show the kind of history of Dad's life and to explain, since he wasn't here too. And cousin Chris, that's online, was very good at being our exhibit director for the timeline.
For the opening, yes. And of course, it shows Philip as a child, and then with his siblings, and then on the last row shows him with his siblings when they were all grown up in a family reunion. The farm was very important in his skills because he had not come up, been raised to use carpentry tools or that sort of thing. And he really developed that skill when he at the farm. And then he was able to use those tools and many, many more when he entered this field of sculpture.
And I think one thing, I know we have family on the Zoom, but if we share this with other people, that if it's on the cultural arts site, it was good to know that he was born in Nebraska. He joined the Coast Guard. We laugh that most people who live in the middle of Nebraska, you know, of course, want to join the Coast Guard. Yeah.
He had never seen the ocean when he joined the Coast Guard.
Yes. So after the Coast Guard, he went to law school at University of Nebraska. He met my mother, Jan, and then I was born first, and then he ran for lieutenant governor, and correct me if I get this timeline wrong, Mom, ran for lieutenant governor and was elected, I think it was 65, what years? I can't remember, that's neither here nor there, but it was the
64.
60s. So then my brother and my sister Karen came along, and he ran for lieutenant governor, and ran for governor and was defeated. So after that, we moved on to Indiana. But in this timeline, the most important time in his life as an artist came when he was at the farm. And then when he moved to Ohio State University with the family and did an exchange in London, England, with Oxford and Ohio State. And Mom and Dad loved theater and live theater and music and art, of which in London, they were able to hear music during the day in the churches, and theater was a reasonable price there compared to even New York at the time. And they offered seniors classes, a certain amount of money to take classes within the area they lived. And that's where he first took art classes and started experimenting with wood. And I have to say, Mom was a docent at the Art Museum here in Columbus. And I think her eye in seeing what Dad was doing, she appreciated some talent she witnessed and encouraged him, and it kind of began to blossom. So good job, Mom.
That's
Well, let's begin to see the works as Lindsay has,
go.
as you speak from them.
Also, Josephine just said she was asking that did Becky and Phil take classes at the Cultural Arts Center as well?
Yes,
Okay.
he did. He had started doing stone carving, and he needed a studio here in the city in Columbus. He had the work area in England at where he was taking classes, and then he had the farm where he could work out by the barn. But here in Columbus, at first he didn't have a studio, so he did take classes down at the Cultural Arts Center. But when you're working with 300-pound pieces of stone, it's a little hard to clear it off the table and stow it away to come back for your class the next time. So he did end up getting a studio down on McKinley, just south of Grandview, for a time there. But yes, he did work at the Cultural Arts Center.
All right. That's, oh, wow. How beautiful.
And these are the first 4 notes of the hymn Jerusalem. And I do, if you know the hymn, I think you'd appreciate that the first words are, and did those feet, and then it takes off in beautiful color sounds of, and it's, I really do enjoy this. He made it entirely from wood that he collected as we walked around in the city in London. And then he designed it on the computer after he had all the measurement. And that was one of the early pieces.
He did, if you're not familiar with the song, there's beautiful renditions on YouTube, but it's also the last kind of climax of Chariots of Fire. They play that hymn.
And that's a very pretty rendition of it.
Here's a question. What did that hymn mean to Phil? What was his attachment to that piece of music?
Well, I think he liked the music, and it was, it's played often in England. It's sort of their unofficial anthem, I would.
It's played before cricket games, and
Oh,
they would also, in London, at certain services, you can sit with the choir boys at Westminster.
Mhm.
And so they would be sitting next to these little boys who had just rolled out of bed and their hair tousled, and hearing these voices that were just so beautiful sing this hymn was a lovely experience.
This is my grandson, Christian, Phil's grandson too. And Phil, he did this one summer. Christian's now 30 years old, and it's a wonderful piece. We really enjoy it. It was a learning experience making it, learning, how much wood to take away, and how just many using new tools.
There's a study sheet that we saved and had on the workbench there at the Cultural Arts Center that shows an extensive amount of algebra when he was working out the proportions on placement of parts of the face and the distance and depth. So who says you can't use algebra?
Oh, it's a beautiful piece. And Christian wants to say something. When I stood before it, I thought, what do you want to say, Christian? So expressive, so beautiful.
Thank you.
Christian I stood by it at the opening for some time. It was fun to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this piece is, he titled it 3 Mile Island. And my father didn't talk a lot about the pieces. He loved, though, over dinner conversation to talk about aspects of design and things. But the only couple things we really know about it is the farm in eastern Pennsylvania was 19 miles downstream from this cooling vat called 3 Mile Island, this power plant near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And in the late 70s, there was an accident at the plant, and which of course we swam every day around 4:30 in the summers to cool off after chores and a day in humid Pennsylvania. So, kind of nerve-wracking, the idea that this plant could have done us any harm. They did use the buses in our community to drive up to Harrisburg. My mother said the school buses, and to evacuate people around the plant. So
Becky, did you mention that it was an atomic power plant?
no,
Yeah.
I didn't. No, that's true. Or
It's an atomic power plant.
So there wasn't a question of radioactivity leaking after this accident. It was a major incident in the United States.
Yes,
The piece is quite big. It's
probably 4 feet at least tall, and about 3.5 feet wide.
I think it shows what he wanted to show. It's a nice work for him to have done early when he was doing more wood.
I saw that often. I lived in Middletown, Pennsylvania, and commuted to Harrisburg teaching.
Really?
And it was a couple of years before.
Yeah. So you carry that memory.
I sure do. And I'm so grateful for the experience of this art. It's transforming as I see it, because my memory isn't all that positive.
Right. Right.
This is, Phil was having trouble finding pieces of wood large enough to work on to what he was thinking of doing. And one of his friends here in Columbus, Ted Colhap,
Ted Compton.
Compton, I'm sorry. Anyway, Ted Compton laminated pieces of wood into a nice big log. And I mean, that's what it looked like, except they were all these pieces that glued together. And then Phil carved this out of it. And I think I like the curve of the wood is, he used that very well. He created that. And he called it gospel. I like hallelujah better. And as Becky often points out, the strings, it can bounce a little bit, and gives it some life.
He started experimenting with multimedia, and he loved to go to nut and bolt shops and different places and look for different odd pieces he could add to his artwork.
That's gorgeous.
But after this, he did more stone.
The work to make that so smooth and beautiful, like the creature's taking off.
And the back of it's chiseled, so it kind of does give you the feeling that you realize how different the texture was. But
Yeah.
thank you for mentioning that. This was the first stone piece, at least one of the earliest pieces he did in London, and it's a golfer, and it's only about 9 inches tall, and it's called Sergio 1, and he and Mom liked watching Sergio Garcia, the golfer. We think it's made out of a soapstone, but I think it's one of the most admired pieces I've seen. The golfers, there's 2 golfers that he did. The people seem really taken with the way it shows action and the texture and the swing. And we did find a file in his notes that had a picture of someone swinging a scythe to help with that feeling of motion.
And as Christian pointed out, in both of his golfer sculptures, the back heel is raised just very appropriately.
Because he's more of a golfer.
Yeah.
This is the second golfer, but it's about 24 inches tall. So it's, and he started using texture in the hat. This is the one I see more people lately just trying to walk around and study. So it's fun to see what draws people in. I I think at our house, we had it up against the wall, so we weren't able to appreciate all sides of it, which is unfortunate. In a Zoom, you can't see all the way around, but hopefully someday
Yeah.
you all will get to.
When I was in London, there was a tiny one-room exhibit at the National Gallery about passage of time and in art. And one of the pictures they used was Turner's train, which is coming towards you, and you feel the movement and that time is elapsing. That's what I like about that swing. It is time elapsing. It's a moment in time, of course, but I think that was well done.
And that moment in time comes with the hat as well. I love that. Wonderful.
Go ahead. You're good. So that's why I wanted to show this close-up of this, is because it's where he starts to show where he's adding texture to things more and experimenting with the chisel. And he uses it I think he uses it quite well in his future artwork.
This is it's called Ball Games. He really meant, and I mean, it's to be given to his good friend Ken Swalgen, who lives in York, Pennsylvania, or Dallastown, Pennsylvania. But it shows different sports, the leg, shape, and having to, dig out this stone to get so he could smooth on the inside. Sense of kicking or dropping a ball into a basket. It's really quite, I think it's well executed.
I'm curious if anyone else can come up with sport analogies and share them with us, that they see in this piece. Does anybody else? Sorry, I'm being the art teacher here. I just, come on, class participation.
Well, I see a kneecap though where the ball is too. So
That's good. That's true. That's true.
The ball is it can be taken out of the piece. It's not, we don't want people to take it out, but it is loose in there.
It's carved cherry.
It was, the whole piece was displayed in the library of, in Penn State, York. It was there for a couple of years. And of course, the ball disappeared finally because,
Somebody helped themselves to the ball.
The students needed a ball to play with. So Phil had to do another one.
Is the container or the sort of the larger part of the work also in wood, or is it stone?
Indiana limestone is the whole piece is done in Indiana limestone, except the ball is carved out of cherry.
Right.
But that's good.
Well, I think that it also conveys motion and has a dynamic quality to it.
Right, good. I like that.
I love so far kneecap in motion. Appreciate it. It gives us more to talk about. But I don't want to drag on too long for you. So feel free. Oh, they're good. Thank you for doing that. So this is the piece as you walk in the door. It's called First Attempt on the Moon. And we like it because it shows my father's sense of humor. We have to give kudos to our cousin Chris that has a place in Eastern Pennsylvania who supplied us with a piece of shale or slate. Slate. And it's a limestone paper airplane crashing into the surface. this angle doesn't quite show the back of the paper airplane. And it took a lot to figure out how he has a rod that he drilled a hole up into the tip of the airplane, and then it goes through a hole he drilled into the base and has attached it so it could come apart.
Hmm.
So I was going to ask, this looks like it defies gravity with its, I would have never known that it had a rod in it. It just looks like magic.
Yeah, he did, that was good. Yeah, I agree. But I think coming up with a stone paper airplane was pretty good.
Well, I have a smaller version that he did. It was made out of alabaster, but alabaster is so fragile and the tip had broken off on the nose. So attaching it again, it just never is quite the same. And alabaster gives it that lightness because the light passes through it, but also being solid limestone is a great way to defy gravity, I think.
Should we move on?
Well, of course, there's no gravity on the moon, so it doesn't
True.
really matter, doesn't it?
You're right. But could you tip it like this? Could you put it how in the direction you like? I don't know. All right.
This was inspired, well, first, I think he was just interested in doing in the balance question and how to do this. And then, but it's sort of reminded him of the
Urban
Ohio
Meyer.
State football coach, Urban Meyer, standing on the sidelines in that position with his hands down on his knees. He did a similar one in London that was leaning over with our flower bed, but it didn't have the headphones on it.
Somebody mentioned yesterday it looked like a number 4 from the other side.
Yeah, it does.
I didn't realize.
Josephine asks, did Philip have the ideas first and then start carving, or did he find the ideas working with the stone?
That he said the stone didn't talk to him, but a stone, we would, looking for stone to buy was always an adventure. And of course, there weren't a lot of choices except limestone. We have a lot of that here in this area. But we went some very interesting places when we were in England, driving unfamiliar trucks and having to drive on the other side of the road and such things. But the answer to the question is maybe he may have had the idea and the shape of the stone would fit the idea, or sometimes he'd come up with an idea once he would buy the stone. But then you always often run into problems with veins, that things crack. It's you have to adapt.
That's good.
So especially in alabaster. Limestone's a little more dependable, but not totally.
Can you relate that to children? No. Adapt.
Phil said he was tired of pictures of mother and child. So you can't see that well here, but he's on a toboggan with a child holding a child, and he claimed it was father and son.
That's made out of alabaster as well.
Yeah, that is pretty small, but he did do a lot of sledding and with the children many years. I still remember when all the buttons came off of his winter coat when he was lying on the sled going head first.
With all of us on top. Yeah.
But anyway,
Oh, that's wonderful.
Okay.
Ah,
This one, yeah, this one has gotten a lot of attention at the Cultural Arts Center. It's been interesting watching. If you're familiar with the painting by Michelangelo from the Sistine Chapel, I have a little image of it here, just to refresh people's memory. The other side is even more interesting because of the texture and the hands. And I think Mom can explain it better, that what Dad's intention was.
Well, he has, this, the upper one is, you know, God giving life to then Adam's hand. And I see Phil put the hand, God's hand up like he's a stopping motion. And he made Adam's hand look very modern, very robotic. And I think it's sort of saying, God sort of saying to man, wait a minute, you know, what's going on here? But
Reconsiderations.
yes, I like to think it's related to that he's worried about the planet. So it's,
But the one thing people have noticed is it's such a large piece. He drilled a hole down through the center of the boulder and then drilled up into this ring to attach a bracket so that the piece can be slipped in and out. It takes 2 strong people to pick up that top piece. Alone is easily, close to 100 pounds. And then he's bolted the boulder to that base. The smaller rocks are loose, but it's quite a hefty piece of art. A lot of technical difficulties too.
and actually we're looking at the back of it and from the front of it, which faces the rest of the gallery, it's even nicer.
Amazing.
So you can see in that picture how smooth and not as much detail in the palm of the lower hand. And then we have lots of pictures he took of his arm to research how to do the hand.
Well, having been in the Sistine Chapel, this means all the more. This is exquisite and so real in that theology. God saying, what are you going to do with the earth?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Did your husband, your father, have a good sense of humor?
Very.
you sure did.
Yeah. You go ahead.
Well, I know, Alex, can you read that? And is it properly written in French?
You can't see the whole thing. No. Oh,
The,
down the bottom you can.
Oui, ceci n'est pas un Magritte. I assume it's supposed to be masculine, not feminine. So yeah, looks right.
This is not a Magritte.
So it's not glass, it's plexiglass, and it's a wooden apple. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the surreal artist named Magritte, this is a small example of one of his pieces that when people see this, if they're not familiar, they recognize it from pop culture. It's been used. But Magritte also made a painting of a pipe, and he wrote in French, "This is not a pipe." And for surreal artists tend to put juxtaposition, with the way they put their objects, what they say, what they do. It's dreamlike, it looks real, but it's not. And he had what do you call it? Somebody who carves headstones do the sandblasting of the word, "This is not a Magritte," around the derby hat, which is made out of soapstone.
And the idea is that this is not a work by Magritte, just as Magritte said, this is not a pipe.
And It's very heavier than it seems.
Yes, it's very
appears.
heavy.
A great hat.
It's-
Did he wear hats?
Did he wear hats?
Yes.
Oh, sometimes, yeah. Well, of course, in our younger days, he wore hats because you, as a young lawyer, you had to dress up. And, but other, he wore baseball caps mostly if he was working it on sculpture. So
What is the apple made out of again?
It's a wood, I think
it's just a purchased wooden apple.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think this is quite striking. It's Phil, in all modesty, staking his claim to a position in the surrealistic, or the canon of surrealist artists of the 20th century, now the 21st, or I guess.
Yes.
It's gotten a lot of appreciation as well. Again, it's interesting to watch people, what they engage with. That's what's so beautiful about having this opportunity with an exhibit, is to see things we didn't appreciate, or notice that other people have. This piece is a vase, and I printed a picture of a piece of art we've had in our home for decades. I'm glancing over at it by the kitchen table. This piece we've had framed in our home for decades, and you can see the two upright vases. And every morning, where this kitchen area we're sitting in, my father would read the New York Times, have his leg up on the table, drinking his coffee, and this picture was in front of him. So I personally think that it played a large role in this vase called Alas. And
Drop water.
yeah, he went to the local glass blowing gallery studio here in Columbus and asked for one of the artists to create a droplet of water out of glass to put inside the vase. So he glued this drip into
They did it.
Did they glue that in? So they created that for him per his directions.
Wow.
Texture is amazing on that.
Katie took these pictures, so I appreciate it.
This is this is out of marble, and Phil did it in England. It is, I don't have any backstory on what inspired him, but what we have is this woman crouching in fear, but with a sign of her defiance. It's the place it sits in our house. I've noticed that I have to keep an eye. Guests want to feel the back there, and of course, if you touch marble too often, it turns, the oils in your hands will damage it. But I certainly understand the desire, because it's so smooth, and it's the muscles are there, and just it's beautifully done.
Is it entitled Code Red, and is that a name that Phil gave to it?
Code Red, very appropriate now, isn't it? That's
With
the
climate report that just came out
Yeah.
called Code Red.
And that is the name he gave it. I think it sort of demonstrates what he felt was happening.
Well, and it was stamped on the back of the feet near, underneath her behind, and it was stamped there. And whether through touching, through absorption of the stone, but the stamp has disappeared. But their neighbors in England were, my parents weren't there for the whole summer, so they asked a neighbor if he would keep it for them. But because the sign in England is such a, not something very nice you would do to somebody, the backwards peace sign, he preferred not to keep it, to store it for my dad. So I don't know whether he ended up just putting a blanket over it or what they ended up
No,
doing.
there was a place we stored it, but yeah,
How creative to paint the fingernails. How it's striking as walking toward it to see the hand with the fingernails painted red.
Yes. Yeah. Well, a lot of people think it's from crowd, a lot of people think that reminds them of when they were kids and they had to get under the desk, and
for the,
Mm.
what did they call them?
Or-
Exercises in case of
Duck and cover.
bombing or something like that. And it was.
What, Alex?
Duck and cover.
Duck and cover. That's right.
Yeah, that's what it.
Thank you.
And a sign of peace, huh? Peace.
This was done in about 2008.
It's called Obama.
It was done at the farm. I didn't know what he was, what his new sculpture was going to be. And I walked, maybe 30 feet away from his studio and looked up and I saw Obama. I knew it. He really showed somehow the placement was just right for me. It's harder for other people to see because the face is done in facets, 4 facets. And I just love that because I think it shows the facets of Obama's personality and his intelligence. I really liked it. So anyway, and I do have to say that when Phil did it, Barack Obama had black hair. And so our life really did imitate art in this case. He couldn't do, in order to
Chisel.
make that, the gray part back, he had to use the chisel, and that always turns that black stone gray. So, but anyway, it's probably my favorite piece.
You'll have to do a 360 and share it with everybody so we can see the face at some point.
Well, and I was noticing on this photo, it's almost an optical illusion, the way the dark and the light play off of each other. So I hope you can see that the facets in the front are the shinier polished soapstone and coming together like at the nose point. And then there's another ear on the other side in gray. The ears are set back towards the back. But yes, we will, Alex, certainly. This one he called bread, and I think Mom can tell more about the.
Well, it's a huge piece of bread or a loaf of bread, oversized, and of course representing, our need for food, and the knife is from a naval survival kit from from World War II. And it happened to be in the things that were left by the previous owners at the farm. And we later researched the knife, and that's what we discovered about it. But I love the idea of the knife being in the bread and having the survival connection. It's far too small to cut
Slice it.
slices like a bread knife, and it's sort of represents, you know, our needs and our solutions. It's it is on a table in my kitchen.
And it's made out of marble, right? If we didn't say that.
The texture is just amazing.
It's,
Hmm.
it's quite striking when in, you know, in the smaller kitchen area. It's I do enjoy having it.
This one, it takes 3 people to lift and barely lift at that point. It's about 300 pounds. It's called Came Tumbling After, which, you know, we don't know a lot about what he was thinking for this piece other than technical skills. He used a lot using mixed media, trying to attach the wood pieces as if they're tumbling. He somehow the board that's the board that goes up and down will slide in and out, and then the wire coming off the top of the board is has a magnetic marble attached to it, so the marble can be taken on and off. So it's kind of precarious looking. The chiseling texture he did all the way around, and he also at the very base had chiseled in the name of the piece, Came Tumbling After. Thank you, Lindsay. And then just the polishing and how well he did that, and the cutting and carving, because when you do all those different, to polish a stone, between all of the saws and the hammer drills and then he had gloves that he had purchased that had carbon, you know, industrial carbonized diamonds on it to use to help file down along with files, and then down to the sandpaper. Technically, there's a lot going on here. So other than that, we don't really know
Nothing more really to.
philosophical or, you know.
Well, I'm reminding myself of the nursery rhyme and trying to see how it might fit, might help to explain. Remember Jack and Jill climbed up the hill?
And right, came tumbling after.
Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after.
Uh-huh.
Well,
And they climbed
the crown
they
of the
cl-
8 is broken, so what does that mean?
a broken crown. Good
Oh.
point.
That's it.
The crown of the 8 is broken.
True. Thank you, Alex.
Who knows? Some of you might have been there with him when he was working on stuff or toying with ideas.
This is just a vanishing rail from, you know, railroad, and it's Phil enjoyed. He used the rail in some other works. He really, it's a nice size. It's about 18
Yeah.
inches. And of course, it's the vanishing part gives you an idea of distance
And speed and
it's very, of course, it's quite polished and very pleasant to look at and enjoy.
the other thing is and this family that may know this on the Zoom, but his grandparents met on the Union Pacific Railroad in Cheyenne working on the railroad. So there's a little family connection there. And plus, of course, the train speeding across Nebraska. The farm also had the train that ran along the Susquehanna River. And then where they live here in Grandview, the train is a kind of a nice, you can kind of hear the train sounds in the background off and on. So
Did Phil ever have any ideas, specific ideas about how to, what's the word, present these pieces? Because it seems to me this would be very interesting to play around with and have it, you know, maybe up on end or disappearing into the wall or something like that.
You,
he probably, I mean, he probably did. I don't know about tipping it up because the bottom, he didn't really finish the bottom, but definitely the direction. Now, you have to remember, almost all this sculpture has been in their apartment. So having space, like we talked about the golfer, but it definitely has shown us being in the gallery how things look better in certain directions, you know, certain, and cousin Chris had talked about putting together a booklet of, you know, catalog of the work. And it's like how trying to get as many pictures as we can, you know, to do it justice, you know, to do the sculpture justice. Yeah. This one deserves a good spot though.
Well, when I looked at it, it was placed below the montage or the collection of all the photographs of Phil through his life, and so it had a prominent place in the exhibit. And what struck me about it was the absurdity, and it showed. I thought it showed Phil's sense of humor. In addition to all the things that you've talked about, that this rail vanishes at one end. It's getting smaller and smaller. It's going to disappear.
Yeah. That's
It's kind of funny, I think.
it's good to hear.
We are on the City Channel YouTube. We have about 5 more minutes, and I think what I'm going to do is make the announcement for the next 2 weeks, and then we can conclude with your wonderful, wonderful exhibit. It is yours too, isn't it? It is yours, as it is Philip's. But I want to say in 2 weeks, that would be August 26th, Conversations and Coffee is welcoming Father John Predmore, a Jesuit priest who is a painter and teacher of art in Boston, Massachusetts. So he comes across the miles by Zoom at noon on the 26th of this month. So join us, and you join us too, huh? So let us continue. We have, about 5 more minutes? Is that right, Lindsay? Time-wise, the city of Columbus, about 5 more
Yep,
minutes.
we got that.
All right,
Yep.
let's continue.
We got one more image to share. This was the last one.
This is again playing with the rail, and it's out of wood, and it was probably the last work that he did. It's you know, it's a pleasing image, and one that carries out his interest in the rail as a symbol.
Hmm.
I did want to share one thing. My father, because he had been ill for off and on for the last years of his life, he, you know, working in stone wasn't something that was necessarily easy for him to move around. But he had his studio here in Columbus was in a building that shared with they're people who box inside chain link fencing, kind of ultimate fighting. So he was in this little studio, and then he would step out, and there was these huge people, men and women that would help him move stone, or like to, you know, chat with them. And he, at the farm, he would get the neighbors or family members to help him move stone. It was just he liked to include people as much as possible in what he was doing, and he loved life. So
Yeah. Is there a picture of the whole room in any of these where you get the scope of the show. It's been
I
It's
don't have that
rather good.
picture, but I think it exists. It might be on our website under the
Oh.
exhibitions page.
Yeah.
The picture that shows the two hands meeting in the circle
Mhm.
has a broad view of the exhibit.
Yes, this one. You can see the room
That's
better.
right there. That if you see the exhibit from the other side, this is sort of at the back and at the center and sets off the other works. The room is just a wonderful place to have had this exhibit, and we really have appreciated everything that the Cultural
Everyone.
Arts Center's done. And I can't imagine of a better location. So I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate that.
And thank you to everyone who came and joined us.
Yeah, that's really fun to see everybody.
Juliet.
Mother and daughter, you were a beautiful team. We thank you. Philip would be so proud of you in spirit. I'm so delighted at what you have shared.
Alex is showing a picture of Phil that was taken when he was winning a game, and it had a wonderful look on his face that, oh boy.
Yes, yes, he loved it.
So it's been fun. Thank you.
And Jason, thank you for coming on.
All right.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yes, thank you guys.
It's been a
Thank
lot.
you,
The
Jan and
recording has
Becky.
stopped.
Thank you, Jan and Becky again.
All right. Well, we'll have to Zoom everyone another time.
Yeah,
Yes, we will have to. Thank you so much to everybody.
you're welcome.
It was good to see you all too.
Wonderful to see.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.